And just to start out in a really good mode, I've realized I've got the wrong first slide, but all the rest of the slides are perfectly okay. So this is for all of you who are just starting your Talk Postgraduate program, not who just finished your Talk Postgraduate program. It's still focused on what can you do now that you're right at the start of your postgraduate program. And hopefully we'll be able to, the rest of the slides will be absolutely okay. So what the process is going to be that I'm going to talk through some of the slides, and then I'm going to pause at various times, take any of the questions which Suzanne wants to feed to me, and then I will have questions at the end. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today is something about the current state of the job market. We're going to talk about recruitment this year and what's changed, but what's continuing as normal, because there are a lot of things which are just the same as normal, it's all happening online. I'm going to talk about resources to help your job search or your search for a PhD. So I know that some of you are interested in PhDs rather than jobs next year. And then I want to give you some smart tactics for uncovering more jobs or PhDs if you're not finding the ones that you want, or you want to try to access some which don't necessarily hit the adverts. So in terms of questions, as I said, I'm going to answer the questions in a block, blocks during the session, and then also at the end. But we're going to pilot something, or at least I'm going to try this. I'm going to have a go at doing like a postgrad open careers meeting. Try and do it every Wednesday, 12 noon till 1 p.m. Do it by Zoom. And now that we've got these authenticated Zoom licenses for our students, as long as you've registered for your Zoom license through the University of Manchester, I'm going to be able to restrict it to just people who can come in using their name at postgrad.manchester.ac.uk. The QR code there should get you the Zoom link, and that will only be open to those people who are actually registering or going through their authenticated University of Manchester postgrad account. So the idea there is that I'll have a little bit of an update in terms of the job market, or what we think is coming up, or employers who are going to be online with us in the next week or so. But then really keep it informal, and so you can ask questions, bring along your questions, but if you want to come along anyway and also listen to what other people's questions are, it's a way of just getting a little bit of up-to-date information. I've no idea how many people will turn up. It might be 10 of you, in which case we can have a nice informal chat. If it's more than 10 of you, if there's more than 400, then I'm afraid it's the first 300 who get into the Zoom room. Okay, so we'll see if that works, and I'll see how it works after the first week, decide whether to continue in the same format or to tweak it. So what's happening in the current job market? Well, you're going to hear an awful lot of things about the current job market, which are going to come from some maybe slightly flaky sources. I've got particular sources that I go back to time and time again, so people who I can trust. Always look at the source of the information to try to figure out whether it's credible or not. And these are two of the sources which I use. One of them is the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. That's mainly recruitment agencies, and they understand what's happening in their business in terms of the number of vacancies that they're advertising. So they're tracking that along with various partners. Another really, really good source is Dr. Charlie Ball. He's probably the UK's leading expert in graduate careers. And we know Charlie very well. He's actually part of the Prospects organisation, which is based on the University of Manchester campus, although they're not part of the university. But I trust anything that Charlie tells me. So what kind of things am I hearing from them? Well, current job market, yes, it's down. But it's down in patches, and some things are doing okay and some things are doing really badly. So what you have to do is dig below the surface, and that's why I think it's important to go beyond the kind of the headlines that you're going to find. I think a really, really important point to make for any of you who are doing postgraduate qualifications is that we've been careers advisors through a number of economic downturns. This isn't the first one. And in terms of every other economic downturn we've had, yes, young people have done, badly during those kind of downturns, but that's mainly young people without extra qualifications. So you're going to hear lots of headlines about the lost generation, all these kind of very big scare stories. But in practice, graduates and postgraduates although you may find it's not as easy as previous years, you're actually in an awful lot of better position than people who haven't gone on to do those high level qualifications. So I think you can think you've done the right thing by trying to up your skills, get those higher order skills, and get those high level qualifications, and hopefully that will help you in the job market as well. And then I would say be really careful about the facts, evidence. Be careful which newspapers you believe, which Twitter accounts you believe. I will believe LMI Charlie, which is Charlie Ball, but there's many other people I would just kind of ignore. Okay, so let's talk about some of the real facts which are coming through. Now, the first thing I've got is from the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, and they've done some work on how confident are employers. So in terms of the confidence, you can see that the blue line here is the confidence in the UK economy. And these were figures which were shown towards the end of September. So in terms of the UK economy, you can see obviously confidence has dropped dramatically since this is March to May 2016. You can see it wobbles up and down at various times. The big, kind of the last peak was just before lockdown, and then there was the big fall. But it's kind of improved a bit since the low point in June. And then you look at the employer confidence trends in making hiring and investment decisions. So they're thinking about for the future. If they're going to hire people, they need to know that they've got a demand both immediately and probably longer term. And yes, I mean, the confidence is lower than it was so back in February, obviously. But if you actually look at the confidence, there are a couple of other points in recent history, that's in the last year or so, where actually confidence was lower than it is at the moment. So, it's, yes, things are challenging, but it's not off the scale challenging, at least not at the moment. Things can change. I also wanted to have a look at whether job ads were going up or down in the UK, and it's really hard to get a one figure. There is no one figure because lots of people measure it in different ways. So what I thought I'd do is show you job ads going up or down in the UK. Well, this is from the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. And I showed this last week, and I've actually changed some of the slides I'm going to show because I think that getting a little bit more information to give a clearer picture now. This was the adverts that the employment agencies are putting out. They reckon there were about 1.35 million back in beginning of March. Yes, it went down dramatically to June, but in their books, look at the scale. This is only to just below 1 million job adverts, and then it's risen up again. And the last point that I've got on this was for the 20th of September, which is 1.21 million job adverts, which, it's a lot of job ads. They're not all for new graduates, admittedly. So, different types of job adverts, but it shows that kind of peak going down dramatically, but creeping back up again. Other sources have a broadly similar picture, but with different absolute numbers. So this was one from Indeed, and they've been tracking their adverts. The way they've done this is back in February, they've got an index of 100 and then saying, well, how has it changed since then? So job adverts, 7-day moving average, have gone down dramatically, obviously, after lockdown. Again, that low point in June and starting to creep back up again. So still significantly below where we were in 2018 and 2019 at this time of year, but it's starting to creep up again. And then finally, one from, this is the Institute of Employment Studies, another very credible source, and they've been tracking an analysis of data from Adzuna, another jobs advertising site. And again, slightly different absolute numbers. They're talking about 800,000 job adverts back in February. So, it depends which ones they're tracking. But again, the same point, going down to June, but starting to creep back up again. Okay. It's getting to be a mixed picture though, because at the moment you're hearing two different messages. One is that redundancies are going to be going up or are already starting to go up, and that's because the furlough schemes are coming to an end. But they're also hearing that job vacancies are going up. So it's a bit it's patchy, and you need to think about what parts of the job market are you looking at. It's going to be very different in different parts of the job market. So, you know, the fact that we're not traveling will have a knock-on effect in the petrochemical sector. And we're hearing some quite heartbreaking stories about some of our international postgrads who already had a job lined up in the UK in petrochemicals, and that job has now been withdrawn. So, you know, there are some real tricky points in the job market, even for those higher end skills. But then we're hearing that some of the education jobs, they're bouncing back as normal. So things associated with children going back to school, they're positive. On the other hand, you know, you've got people, obviously it's a really, really hard time in the creative arts at the moment, and that's having a knock-on in business. So things like Cineworld, a big chain with lots of business type roles, as well as part-time student jobs, that's having a problem. So you can see that there's lots of very patchy parts of the job market. You need to keep your eye on the news and start to think more deeply. What impact could the current news of the sectors I'm interested, how might that affect the jobs which I've got my eye on? So I'm just going to pause there, Suzanne, and see if there's anything which you want me to answer, or any questions which have come in you'd like to have a go at. And I suspect that Suzanne has been answering a lot herself, but
yes, lots of typing, which is great. But
we can't guarantee that we'll answer all your questions, but we'll do what we can. Okay, Suze.
Yeah, there was a few questions about the links to your sources for your kind of job market kind of explanation. But what I was sort of saying as well was that, you know, a lot of, you know, what Elizabeth has shared with you, can Google yourself. But so, you know, it is what it is, and what will make the difference is how you react in this situation. You know, it's whatever happens, it is what it is, but how you kind of use that and how you respond to it will make a big difference in how you manage through this time.
Yeah, I mean, my primary source is Charlie Ball at Prospects. So if you look at Prospects Luminate is their kind of blog site where they're talking about the job market. A lot of that's aimed at people like myself in careers work, but it's absolutely open for everybody to look at, and particularly to graduates. So Charlie's regular updates are sought after, and it's detailed links to lots of other sources, and that's normally where I start out. The other one I sometimes look at, I mean, I certainly follow on Twitter, is Tristram Hooley, who's the research officer at the Institute of Student Employers, which deals with the kind of the big employers for graduates. Tristram is also a professor of employment studies at Derby, and I've known him for a long time. His Twitter handle, I still don't know why he's called this, is Pig Iron Joe. Who knows? But anyway, so again, he's somebody else who's really got a really strong, credible research background, and there you get both the employer angle, the employment studies angle, and with Charlie you can get the graduate recruitment angle. Anything else, Suze, before I move on?
I think some of the other questions you're going to be covering in the rest of the presentation, so okay. I'll keep filtering them as we go through.
Right, okay, so let's go through. Let's go a bit further. Okay, so let's talk about recruitment. What's different this year, and where can you find these kind of job and PhD adverts? Now, one of the things I've done over the summer is I've created a whole series of online resources specifically targeted at our top postgraduates, and one of them is about the recruitment year. So it's just kind of giving you a feel for what kind of employers and jobs get advertised at what point during the recruitment year, all the way through to this time next year. So you can see that cycle is a fairly common cycle, with our best guesses of what might be happening in this current year, which might be a little bit different. And it's also got details of what are the career service and other employer activities, so events and things that you will see at different points in the year. The little QR code there will take you through to the postgraduate page of the career service website. There you can see the Talk Postgrad page, and also our careers events and talks. So that makes it nice and easy to get there. Okay, so what's changed this year? Okay, well, it's been an interesting year. Everything was kind of paused initially. So in March, everybody held their breath. Recruitment was paused. HR staff were often furloughed. So I had a lot of people who were very worried over the summer. They were sending out emails to recruiters wanting to apply for jobs, and were getting no response. And I had to gently point out that a lot of the time that was because the recruiters actually weren't there to answer any of the emails. So so that means that, you know, everything just kind of went to pause for a while. Then in June, things started to return a little bit. There's a bit of a tentative return in some sectors. Okay. And then finally in September, you've got a lot of the graduate schemes are actually now recruiting. So what you're finding is that the big employers are still wanting to invest in new graduates, and these are graduates for next year, which I'll talk about that kind of lag in the recruitment phase. Some smaller employers, though, are going to be waiting, and you'll find even some of the bigger employers, particularly in sectors where they're really being affected quite severely by the pandemic. Then in those types of sectors, you're going to find employers will maybe be just a little bit more cautious, maybe not recruit until later on in this semester, or even leaving it till later. And then obviously, say some sectors are really struggling. So let's talk about what's being advertised right now. Now, the jobs being advertised right now are by and large for graduate schemes. They're often the big name recruiters. And the key point to note about those is that the jobs which are being advertised at this time of year, often for these big name schemes, are going to start this time next year. So September, October next year. And that could fit in with you if you're on a one-year master's, although you just have to be a little bit cautious because sometimes they want you to start earlier than you actually finish your master's program. So it doesn't always fit in perfectly. It's only about 10% of the graduate jobs, though. The vast majority of graduates and postgraduates don't go into these graduate schemes that you're hearing all about. It's the fast track into management, kind of the elite programs, and they're great if you get onto them if it's the right thing for you. But for sometimes postgraduates, it's not exactly the right kind of programs. If you've got any experience, frankly, you know, more than a couple of years experience, you don't want to be looking at these schemes. They're going to be too kind of junior for you. However, if you do want to go for them, now is the time to get started. You have to apply early, and by early I mean, you know, really you start to be looking right now. People are already applying and already being interviewed for some of these graduate schemes. And a curiosity about the UK job market is that a lot of these graduate scheme programs, quite a number of them will accept any degree subject. That's not common across the rest of the world. It's a bit of a quirk of the UK graduate recruitment system. But you know, you can have a zoology degree and go and become an accountant. That's okay. You have to demonstrate you're interested in accountancy, but it's still okay. Okay, how do you find these schemes? So there are lots of ways you can find them. One of the main ways you would find them is these the big well-known schemes are going to be advertised on the main graduate job sites. And if you want to find those graduate job sites, go onto the Career Service website and look under which career. And there we've got links to job resources and profiles from a whole range of different sectors. So these are our kind of curated best starting points. So we've gone and trawled them, had a look and see which ones we think actually look credible and are giving you good results. And those are the ones which are on our website. Another really important thing to know about is we have careers fairs, and those careers fairs are happening next week. I know it's early, but this is the normal time for graduate careers fairs. So on Monday, on the 19th, we've got the Finance, Business and Management Fair. On Tuesday, the 20th, we've got the Science Technology Fair. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, we've got the Law Fair. There will be another postgrad study fair, which is coming up in November, I think 17th of November. But that's for people who want to go into further postgrad study, including PhDs. It's not a postgraduate jobs fair. There isn't a postgraduate jobs fair because graduate employers in the UK basically say, as long as you've got a degree, whether that's undergraduate or postgraduate, we're happy to talk to you. So they don't specifically target postgraduates, certainly at these kind of careers fairs. Another thing to really note about these careers fairs in the UK is that oddly, they're not so much about being recruited actually at the fair. I know that in some countries you go along to a fair and you possibly be interviewed and get job offers at that fair. That really doesn't happen in the UK. They're more about employers being able to market their jobs and their schemes, and also show that gives you the opportunity to ask them questions which you can then use to target your applications. So they can be really, really useful, giving you that inside information, but don't go along expecting to be recruited. Also, if the kinds of employers that you're interested in or the sectors you're interested in aren't covered by the careers fairs, don't panic, because it just means that you have to go directly to those employers. You haven't missed out on a big recruitment fair, which is where you find all the jobs. They don't happen like that in the UK. Do come along though next week. Well, we're going to have, by come along, I mean come along online. All our events are online this semester, and we've been planning that from quite a time back. So we've got 50, 60 employers at each of the fairs, and you'll be able to ask them questions, obviously look at other resources. We've got web chat going with myself and Suzanne, no doubt be there answering questions if you've got them coming along to the fair. So yeah, so there's lots of good resources for you. The other great resource for getting graduate schemes is on Careers Link. And Careers Link, if you haven't discovered it yet, that's our careers, jobs and vacancies and events database. So you've automatically got an account as a University of Manchester student. You just use your normal normal university login, and that will get you into your Careers Link account. And that means that you get the chance to see these vacancies and all the events that we've got coming up that you can book onto. Okay, there are other types of jobs though, and this is actually where the majority of you are probably going to end up working. So these are job ads that you can look out for at any time, and it's direct entry and immediate hire. They could be any size recruiter, so they could be a smaller recruiter, but they could also be these very, very large recruiters as well. So you do actually find that quite a lot of people who've got these graduate schemes will also take on other graduates into just jobs, you know, actually going in and doing a job. I have actually come across the fact where I've seen a couple of employers where I've been along to visit the employer and they've wheeled out their recent graduate trainees to show us careers advisors with the kind of people that they take on. And it's notable that it's always a few of them who actually, it isn't their first job. And I've certainly seen people where they've come in to just a job with a big employer and then applied to their graduate scheme the following year as an internal candidate. So that's another strategy. With these kinds of direct hire jobs though, they don't recruit a year in advance. They're generally recruiting, you know, for jobs which are going to start as soon as they can hire. And I would say, you know, as a kind of very rough rule of thumb, start to apply about 3 months before you need a job. Start to really get active applying then. You can apply earlier and then hope that they will wait. In some cases they might. But if you start applying for these direct hire jobs now and you're going to have to wait for a year, they're probably not going to be interested in you unless you've got some really special skills, which they might be prepared to at least just keep in touch with you. So where do you find these direct hire jobs? Well, these are going to be ads on any kind of general or specialist jobs boards. Yes, we do have them on Careers Link. We have jobs which are advertised all year round. So if somebody knows that they want a graduate or a postgraduate within the next 2 or 3 months, they can advertise for free on Careers Link. And you also get recruitment and employment agencies, and particularly those specialist agencies. The one that I'm showing there is from Reed. Reed is one of these big agencies in the UK, and their website's reed.co.uk. The thing I like about them is that they've got a section where you can look and see who's advertising at the moment and who are the recruitment agencies by specialism that they're advertising on their very big UK website. And that's one really smart way of trying to find specialist recruitment agencies for the sector that you're interested in. So this is just a bit of a screenshot from some of the scientific recruitment agencies. And so people like CK Science or VRS or Hayes, I know, are the ways into some of the big pharmaceutical companies, for instance. So that's another good way of trying to find those kind of specialist resources which might help you. Okay, what about international jobs? Well, obviously a lot of them you're going to be looking outside the UK. You need to check local job hiring practices because recruitment isn't the same the world over. One really important difference is that you generally need a relevant degree for those kind of graduates entry type options in non-UK countries. And so, you know, you're going to struggle if you've got a history of art masters and want to go and work in Spain doing accountancy. That really doesn't work, although it could just work in the UK. On the positive side, you find that some of these European and global graduate roles, actually their graduate level entry requires a master's. So that's where you do win out. You don't find that in the UK very often. It's rare to find graduate entry positions where they say we specifically want a master's. They're very welcome. You're very welcome with a master's, postgraduate, or other taught postgraduate course. And actually, you could find yourself at an advantage over the other graduates who are applying, because even if you come straight from an undergraduate degree onto a taught postgraduate course, you've now got the whole of your final year of your undergraduate degree that you can refer to when you're applying for these jobs, whereas the undergraduates haven't actually done that year yet. So that's where you can win out as a taught postgraduate. Other things to look out for within international recruitment, you sometimes find that internships are more of a thing than in the UK, but they're not always paid. So again, you need to look and see what the different local practices are. I would say read the local news in whichever country you're wanting to go to, whether that's going back home or whether it's going to a third country, and try and figure out which of the industries which are going to be most affected, and then try to get some local intel about who are the people who are hiring, who are the people who are actually struggling. So definitely keep your contacts going back home, or try and find contacts in the country that you want to move into. And obviously, you're in a really cosmopolitan university now. So if you want to go to a country that's not your home country, I'm sure you're going to find somebody else on campus who's from that country and share knowledge. It's really useful to do. Now, there are some good international recruitment sites that can help you. There's the Prospect site, which has information for about 30 countries around the world. And that talks about going to work, I think also to study in a wide range of countries. That's kind of written from a UK perspective, but also takes account of our international students as well. One which is specifically for international students who are studying in the UK is GradLink, gradlinkuk.com. And that's about finding jobs in your home country, even though you studied in the UK. And it's specifically for employers who are interested in students or graduates from their own country, but who've got that experience of studying in the UK. So that's definitely one to have a good look at. And then one which I think is particularly important for postgrads is Passport Career. Passport Career is a licensed product which we've licensed for all of our own students. So it allows you to get information on kind of job hunting etiquette, job hunting websites, CVs, visa conditions for over 80 countries around the world. And the QR code will take you to the page where you find out how to get the University of Manchester registration code. It's a great big long URL, so the QR code's much easier for you to use there. Okay, one thing I have mentioned before, and I want to just have a special point about it, is internships. Okay. Now, if you are looking for an internship, I think you just need to pause for a second, because in the UK, most internships are aimed at undergraduates, not at graduates. So they're often for people who are doing placements, people who are doing summer placements, but they're really not aimed at people at the end of their programs or at postgraduates. And in particular, we're finding that although some of the big employers are continuing with their graduate recruitment schemes, they're actually sometimes pulling back on their placements and internships. So even those ones which are aimed at undergrads aren't necessarily going to be there in the same numbers. I would say, yeah, if you're looking internationally, in the UK, you should be paid for any internships as long as it's more than, say, 3 or 4 weeks. Although you do find some sectors where it's not very common, but you should legally be paid for internships in the UK. However, internationally, there are different laws apply. So you need to check both if you're going to be paid, or there are actually quite a lot of websites you find if you Google international internships where they can find you some great internships, but you actually have to pay them for the privilege of doing those internships. So it's not a cheap way of getting experience at all. I think there's an alternative. And I think this is something which maybe you might want to think about later on in your program, not necessarily at the moment because it's a little bit too far away for doing this, but you can create your own internship. What you're looking for is a job to gain skills and experience that you need. And what you need to do is maybe approach employers or look for temporary or contract work. Think about making speculative applications, write directly to people who aren't advertising work, but maybe say, look, I've got X, Y, and Z skills. I'm looking for temporary or contract work. And you present yourself as a solution to the problem. If you present themselves as, I'm looking for an internship and I like training or experience, why would they want to give that to you? There's no particular benefit to the employer. But if you say, right, I've got really good database skills, or I'm really good at these particular lab skills, if you've got any short-term requirements, I could be available at short notice, that's much more attractive. So I think that create your own internships a smart move, particularly for graduates and postgraduates. Right, I just want to say a quick word about PhDs. So, yeah, PhDs. Universities, again, at the moment, we're all kind of holding our breath a bit. There's a big focus on the financial future. We don't really know what we've been told. We're probably not going to know for sure where our student numbers lie until sort of November time. Obviously, charitable funding's been hit very hard in the pandemic. People aren't raising money, so there's not as much charitable funding around. And it may be that some alumni obviously are having to pull back and not be able to give us as much funding as normal. And that's often what might go towards funding further research. So I think it's just a case of a holding pattern, but I have been able to do some looking back over the last year to see what the situation is like for PhD job adverts. I've got a friend who's a very smart friend at Birmingham University, Holly Prescott, and she came up with this clever idea of looking at the job site jobs.ac.uk, which is where we advertise a lot of PhDs, not all of them, but a lot of PhDs and most of the academic jobs in the UK. And you can use the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, to look at a snapshot of the front page of the site at a whole range of different times over the last few years. And on the front page of this jobs.ac.uk site, it tells you how many jobs they're advertising at that time in a whole range of different fields, whether it's academic jobs or PhDs. So you can see that back in October 2015, they were advertising 425 PhD job ads or ads. And at the moment, or when I last looked at the end of last week, it was 177. So I think that kind of bears out this fact that they're still there, they're still being advertised, but people are holding their breath a bit. Now, if you look at findaphd.com, another really good credible source, again, tail end of last week, haven't looked this week, but tail end of last week, there were just under 1,300 UK funded PhDs. So it's not to say that there aren't postgrad places, not by any stretch of the imagination. The UK government funded PhDs are still going ahead, so that's the research councils who fund a proportion of the PhDs in the UK. Now, that government funding gets given to the universities, then the universities advertise the places. So you don't go direct to the research councils, you go to the universities, and that's how you access the UK government funding for those who are eligible. And we've still got postgraduate loans which are available. So, PhD study, it's hold our breath, but hopefully, there are certainly still going to be places, and hopefully not too many reductions. Okay, so I'll pause again there, Suze. Any questions? I can see you've been typing like mad.
Yes, yeah, we are getting quite a few questions, Elizabeth, about how you get kind of labour market or sector information for specific sectors. So people have mentioned like the public sector or working in development or humanitarian aid. So how about to go about understanding what's happening in their particular area of interest?
That's an interesting one, because I mean, you're right, a lot of the information that we've got is very much the whole economy. What you find is if you go and have a look at some of those sources, I've been talking about Institute of Employment Studies or Indeed or the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. They've often got kind of sector information, but again, it's every kind of work within that sector. So if you've got building and construction, it will lump in people who are doing labouring jobs along with people who are, you know, kind of architects and engineering graduates. So it doesn't really give you that nuance that you need. I think a better way of doing it is having a look at professional associations. So the kind of the professional bodies that you get, who are, you know, the Institute of Chemical Engineers, or, you know, those kinds of professional bodies. They're often very good at keeping an eye on what's happening in our sector, what's happening to our profession. And I would suggest that that's probably your best bet. Yeah, it's in their own interest to keep a track of any employment data. Having said that, you know, there may not be that employment data generated. You have to wait for a survey to go out and then to find out what's been happening. So the Institute of Student Employers, they did a survey at the back end of the summer. It was postponed obviously because of the pandemic. And so we're now waiting for the results of that survey, which will give us a feel for, at the back end of the summer, what were student and graduate employers in a range of different sectors, what were they anticipating going to be happening? How were they thinking about recruitment just before the kind of the main recruitment field? So I'd say professional associations or trade associations can sometimes be useful as well. So that's where you get a group of companies in the same industry or same sector, and they have kind of like a lobby group, and they can sometimes generate good information about what's happening there. Got any other ideas, Suzanne? You're really good at a lot of this, finding ways to get information.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of really start to understand what the sector's about. So, so looking to see what organisations are sharing on their own social media about what's happening to them at the moment and what kind of situation they're kind of operating within. Look to see, you know, are they actually recruiting out actively at the moment or not? Because that will tell you something about where they're sitting at the moment. What you could also do is a little bit of, and I guess Elizabeth might mention this later, but in terms of sneaky kind of networking, and something that can really help you with your career exploration is connecting with people and talking to people who are already there to find out what they can tell you. A really good tool for doing this is using LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, and you can use that. People I do. It's the introverts kind of ticket to networking. And what you can do is you can find people on there who've maybe studied what you're studying, or maybe working in the areas you're interested in, both at Manchester, plus also your previous institution, in which case you're members of 2 networks on LinkedIn, and see what people are saying. You might find you've got a friend of a friend or a connection who works in that sector, and you might be able to contact them and just find out, you know, what's happening at the moment, what advice they might give you. You know, and it's you know, there's nothing, you know, it's sometimes worth taking that step and reaching out, because it's rarely a waste of time.
Okay. Right, shall I move on, because I've got a couple more things to cover, and maybe do the rest of the questions at the end? Okay, that's great. Right, so you've now talked about what's happening in the job market and what jobs to look out for. Now I want to share with you some of our own research. So this is some research that we had done by business psychologists, one of the professors in business psychology a few years back, on our own recent graduates. And we found out from looking at some of our own recent graduates who've gone on to kind of very early career success in a range of types of work, you know, engineering, finance, teaching and humanities, even an independent filmmaker. And then we also looked at some of our own recent graduates who hadn't, so they were either underemployed or even unemployed, so they were struggling to get early career success. And we found out what the difference was. So I'll share that with you. It's quite simple. Over the years, I've taken a very complicated framework that we had, and I've got it down to 3 things. It's easiest to be able to tell you about. For those of you who've been to the welcome talks that I did, this should be familiar. And if it's, I ought to test you and find out if you remember, but it's about being curious. So this is partly about being curious about what's out there. As Suzanne says, you know, trying to, you know, keep an eye open for information, doing, you know, having a look at some of those sources that we've been talking about. Seeing what events are coming up and think, well, I might as well go along and find out. It sounds, I don't know if I'd enjoy it, so I'll come along and listen to it. Or being curious about yourself and about what you enjoy doing. So there's kind of the external curiosity and the internal curiosity. And that really helps. If you think, well, I don't know if I'd enjoy doing this, have a go and see what it feels like. You will learn. So it's learning by doing. which is really important. The other part was being connected. So people who got early career success were very good, obviously, at being able to do CVs and interviews and connect with employers in the right way, knowing the right etiquette. But also they were very good at talking to each other, to friends, family, sharing ideas about their future. I'll come back to that because I think that's a really important part of this early career success. Because it also links in with the final bit, which is being courageous. For some people, courage is about jumping out of an airplane. For me, courage would be standing in front of a bunch of 8-year-olds like one of our postgrads here and trying to keep them entertained about science. Terrifies me. So any of you doing PGCE, I am in awe of you being able to do that. So whatever courage feels like to you, it's about spotting things that you could have a go at doing and thinking, why not? I might as well have a go. And if it does go wrong, having the ability to bounce back. And that's where I think this linking with being connected is important, because if you try something and it doesn't go as well as you'd hoped, the best thing to do is to reflect on that and figure out, well, what have I learned about this? What have I learned about what I enjoy, or maybe what I could do differently in future? How can I learn to be better? And one of the best ways to do that is to talk to your friends and family about it. It does two things. It helps you put things in perspective, and you'll get suggestions from other people, and it helps you to reflect. And it also helps you start to articulate what it was about that experience and what you enjoyed and you didn't enjoy about it. And that's going to come in so useful when you've got to tell a future employer or supervisor about it. So all these three things interconnect. And I think if you can be curious, be connected, and be courageous, that's going to give you the best chance of moving on to whatever happens after that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how you can use some of those to uncover other types of jobs. We've talked really about adverts so far, and that's what everybody thinks about. What's the website I need to go to for all the jobs in XYZ? Okay, well, that's only accessing a part of the job market. You can find jobs through agencies, through putting yourself online and hoping people send you jobs. Occasionally it works. Doing lots of online searches, but uncovering the hidden jobs, I think, is the really important bit. And that's when you engage with employers and you let others know that you're looking. So I think in terms of being curious, the problem you've got is as soon as there's an advert out there, you're in a competition. And in a tight job market like the one that we're in and we're going into, you're going to get dozens or hundreds of replies to an advert, most of which are going to be useless, but it's really hard to pick out the really good ones in amongst all the ones who are just applying for anything. So what you want to do is things like find the employers that you've never heard of, and this is where the curiosity comes in. How might you do that? Well, there's a number of suggestions we've got. We've got an organisation directory on Careers Link, and there are literally thousands of employers who've opted to put their details on Careers Link so that you can search and find people in that sector. So they're interested in graduates from the University of Manchester. We've mentioned professional associations, and I think those are really, really helpful for not only finding out employment information, they often do their own surveys, but you find out where do other members of those professional associations, where are they working? If you've got a member of a professional association like the Royal Society of Chemistry, and you've got a particular specialism you're interested in, not sure what the ones are, organometallic chemistry, you're a member of that specialist network, you can see where other people are working within that network. Similarly, we mentioned trade associations. The nice thing about a trade association, if you're really lucky, you'll find a trade association for the very specific niche type of job that you're interested in. And they sometimes have member directories, and that's perfect for finding the right employers, because literally with the drop-down list, you maybe have hundreds of employers who are working in the field that you're interested in. Sometimes a bit challenging to go through them also, if the really good ones have filters for different aspects of the members. But they're definitely worth looking at. Another place to look at for employers that you've never heard of are business and science parks. Often the smaller employers are the ones who are growing from being just a startup to being actually a little bit more substantial. And they will often cluster maybe around about universities. So, we've got Manchester Science Park, which is literally across the road from the campus. And there's some significant employers in there, as well as some smaller ones that you won't have heard of. And by employers that you've never heard of, I mean in getting below those headline big names. A lot of the big names that you've heard of are just big names because they're business to business or business to consumer. What you want to find are the people who are business to business, who are maybe big names and important players within the industry, but because they don't sell direct to consumers, you've never heard of them. So once you've found them, what do you do with them? Okay, well, you can ask them, you can try and find out where they advertise. So you find an organisation, see where they've been advertising in the past, maybe even contact them and say, if you're looking for a process engineer within this, this organisation, which are the places that you'll be advertising the roles? If they've got a website, can you upload a CV to the website? Again, some specialists and smaller employers are very keen for people to upload CVs if they've got specific specialist expertise. Could you follow them on LinkedIn? That puts you on their radar. If you go and have a look and see if they've got a LinkedIn page, press the follow button, then something will trigger within that organization that you have followed them. So you're now on their radar. Or could you even apply to them speculatively? I know this is not an approach which is often used, but writing to an organization saying, I've got X, Y, and Z skills, I'm just coming to the end of my master's degree at this University of Manchester. I'd be interested in any opportunities which might be coming up in the near future. The reason I say I would suggest that you do that is particularly if you've got specialist skills. I used to recruit in the polymer science industry, and we literally had a file of people who'd written in speculatively for our process engineering vacancies, or even when we didn't have vacancies, because it was really, really hard to find the right people. And if people had written to us speculatively, we kept them on file. And that was the first place we went to recruit rather than writing an advert. We'd check all the people who are on file first. So that's being curious, being connected. This is about being findable. And LinkedIn or other professional networks, there are other networks around the world, Xing in Germany and so on. I would certainly say it's a really smart move to have your LinkedIn profile, complete your profile. So there's lots of, it's kind of a nice rich resource. You've got a photograph on there. You've got a summary of what you're interested in. First 2 or 3 lines are the really important bit of the summary, because that's what people see when they first click on your profile. So it's no point in having something 6 or 10 lines down in your summary if it's critical information. Get it right at the top. So there's tips and tricks like that. Suzanne will tell you all about those in some of the LinkedIn sessions I'm sure that we've got coming up, and all the LinkedIn resources that she's created along with others. You connect with other people. So you may not know people who are going to give you a job at the moment on LinkedIn, but you know your friends. You know people on your course at the moment, people on your previous courses. If you connect now, then that's an investment for the future. Just imagine where you're all going to be in 10 years' time. Imagine your network then. You're going to have so many connections in high places. It's going to be amazing. You want to be active on LinkedIn. You want to follow employers, as we mentioned, join groups. I sometimes get people a bit skeptical about groups, but I want to do something very, very specialist. LinkedIn's all about business stuff. But even with people who are researchers, I had somebody who was talking about, well, I'm in nanophotolithography. Okay, well, try joining the nanophotolithography group, where there are about 1,700 people, all specialists, some of whom are working not in academic roles, but just outside Manchester. And suddenly, they want to dash out of the careers appointment because they've suddenly got a whole bunch of people to try and investigate. So I would say look at some of the professional groups. Those can be really useful for finding out who else is working in those fields, but also maybe making some good connections. So check out all the resources and webinars. I'll ask Suze later whether she's got any webinars coming up. I'm sure she has. If you are wanting to go for a PhD, then getting connected with potential supervisors is important. PhDs are generally, they're advertised round about now, maybe a little bit more towards Christmas sometimes. They don't necessarily recruit until just after Christmas, or sometimes a little bit later. But a lot of that kind of informal making contacts with potential supervisors happens right now, particularly if you're in the humanities and you want to go for a PhD at the end of your master's. If you're in the humanities, it's harder than if you're in the sciences, because you don't have adverts for PhDs by and large. What you have is you need to come up with your own research proposal. You need to find an academic who will support that research proposal and hopefully help you apply with them for funding. And that really has to start happening now if you want it to happen at the end of your masters. It's also okay to take a year out after your masters and do that kind of stuff after you've completed your masters, maybe a research project. Okay, finally, on the terms of the tactics, are being courageous. And this is daring to tell people what you want. I would absolutely share with all those amazing people on other Talk Postgraduate programs. We have the most amazing group of Talk Postgraduates from all over the world who've worked for so many different employers, and a lot of people who I know who've got a lot of experience. So, you want to talk to somebody who's, worked for the United Nations. I can probably point you in the direction of the courses where you're probably going to find people who've worked for the United Nations who are now doing master's courses, or the World Health Organization, or the World Bank. These kind of big multinational organizations. Look around about you. Look on social media, look on LinkedIn, look on our alumni and our employer events. Turn up to them, ask questions. And if somebody says to you, oh, why don't you connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards, connect with them and follow up. Get involved with your professional association, those networking events. Anything which is going to be online means it's accessible from anywhere in the UK or in the world. And certainly make sure that your friends and family know what you're looking for. If you can find somebody who's working in the field that you're interested in, see if you can get the chance to ask them some questions. And they're not necessarily going to find you a job, but learn from others. Say, I just want 15 minutes to pick your brains about what it's like going into this field, what the job market's like at the moment, and ask them about their experience. And also be prepared to help other people. It's everybody likes to help those who have helped other people. And so if you're helpful to others, offering contacts, giving your experience where you can, helping people with feedback, just being supportive, then that can be a great way for getting known as being somebody that other people would like to help. So this idea about daring to share, I think, is one of the most important. Okay, quick comment on the support that you've got coming up. We've got 200 plus online employer and careers events this year. You can't go to them all. You've got to choose wisely. Pick and choose which ones are going to be important to you. A lot are already happened. There's more and more every week. Next week's the big week with the careers fair, so don't miss out on those. We've got lots of PGT resources, online resources, and I've got other postgrad careers talks coming up. We've got the international webinars and resources and lots of social media to keep you up to date. So do have a good explore through the Career Service website. Again, if you came on the welcome talks I did, you probably had a look with me on what we can show you in there. But if you have a look at the Career Service website for postgrads, that QR code will take you directly there. Okay, are there any final questions, Suzanne? I know it's getting quite a long webinar, but any other questions I can cover right now, or maybe we postpone to the next session that we do?
Okay, so I've been posting some links into chat for you to some of the resources that Elizabeth mentioned, links to the careers fair, how to get yourself a verified Zoom account. Some of the questions are, Elizabeth, about kind of how you can get kind of support from the career service in terms of, deciding how you can use your masters, about applying for jobs, when to apply for a job, and sometimes that kind of individual advice that sometimes when you have those questions to ask. Okay, well, right, let me show you the final slide then. Okay, so in terms of support, we've got real people. There's people like Suzanne and me and a whole series of other people. However, what we don't have is 40,000 people, and there's 40,000 students. So we really can't, we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to see you all individually. That's why we put a lot of emphasis on trying to give you self-service resources, which are tailored towards you as a postgraduate. Now, you're smart people. You can do a lot of this yourself. I know it's nice to get some confidence building and feedback, and for those of you who do have particularly tricky issues to deal with, there are appointments. I'm doing appointments. Half of my time is spent doing appointments during the week, so that you can get
appointments as postgraduates, all the way through Monday through Friday most weeks with me or many of my colleagues. What you find is that we've got specialists in particular, or people who are familiar with supporting people from different schools, and they're familiar not only for undergraduates but also for postgraduates. Part of my role is to make sure that everybody feels confident supporting the whole range of postgraduates. And a lot of our careers consultants are postgraduates themselves, so they know what it's like doing a master's or other postgraduate qualification, or PhDs. We've got a couple of PhDs as well as careers consultants. So I would say use our events, use our resources as the first port of call. You can manage this, but if you get stuck, we're there. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put together this postgrad open careers meeting, just to see if it's another opportunity, maybe not to get individual support, but if you got some general questions, or you just want to get a feel for what are other people, is everybody else worried about this as well, come along, ask those questions. You can lurk in the background, let somebody else ask the difficult questions that you're worried about, and I'll do what I can to answer those as well. Anything else you think we should highlight, Suze?
Okay, 3 things. The first thing I'll say is after the webinar today, I'll be able to download the questions I didn't get to. And what we'll try and do is feed those questions into the open session next week, where it's a more general issue. So that will inform what we share with you in the future. But where there's specific information, I'll reply to you. But please don't ask me questions about the job market for chemical engineering, because I don't have a clue. I work with biology students. And I think what Elizabeth said along is it's about you using your research skills to really kind of understand, because by doing this, you'll start to find these opportunities out there. Because yes, jobs are advertised quite widely, but some of the better jobs are a little bit hidden, and by nosing them out, you'll find some really great opportunities. So there's a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. One was about the careers fairs next week. Now these are virtual fairs, so this is how they're going to work. On the day, you'll go onto our webpage for the fairs, which is under events. I put it in chat, and you have a list of employers participating. You'll click through to those employers, and then depending on what they've got on offer, they might have Zoom meetings, they might have presentations, they might have live chat for you to engage them individually. Also on the day, you'll get a chance to ask questions to careers consultants. We'll be manning a general chat for any queries you have on the day. So the main thing to do is go to the website and then engage with the employers. If you want to do a bit of research, a bit of a heads up, have a look now, because all the employers coming have got their details online now. It's just the chat bits aren't switched on. Secondly, are questions around graduate schemes and direct entry jobs. Graduate schemes are the smallest part of the graduate job market. They're just the most visible because they're the ones who recruit thousands each year and come onto campus a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small proportion where our graduates end up. Most of you will get a job, which is a graduate job that requires a degree or postgraduate, with a company which isn't advertised as a scheme, but as a job where they want your skills and experience. So graduate schemes are there, but there's lots of other jobs out there which you could be applying for. So don't just look for schemes, you need to look for jobs in your sector. And on our website, under looking for jobs, there's a whole information there about looking for jobs, and also an FAQ which demystifies the graduate scheme myth. They're only a very small part of the market. And thirdly,
sorry, I wanted a back of the envelope calculation, and looking at all the big employers who are members of the Institute of Student Employers. I reckon there was a maximum of about 40,000 graduate scheme each year, vacancies each year, and there's about 400,000 new graduates just in the UK alone. So most go into graduate level work. So that's
what I would say is that somebody's got to get those jobs, so don't let that put you off applying. You're at Manchester University, you're very bright, you could get those jobs as well, but be pragmatic about it in terms of how you play that game and applying for them. Thirdly, we are doing quite a few sessions on LinkedIn this semester. We're doing some live workshops you'll find out about under events, which I'll be leading with our LinkedIn crack team. If you've not been on LinkedIn yet, it is your secret weapon to actually finding some of these opportunities out there. It's not an online CV, it's much more than that. So if you want to find out about LinkedIn and how to use it, look on our website for some introductory information, but come to our sessions as well, and we'll really show you why it's a really helpful tool for job hunting right now. That's me.
Well promoted there. Good bit of product placement there. Okay, right. Okay, so we're going to end this here. Hopefully I'll see some of you on Wednesday next week. I say it's going to be in Zoom, and I think we're limited to 300 people. So I'm assuming that we're not going to have more than 300 people, but if we do, then it's the first 300 in the room get to have a listen to us. Okay, very nice to speak to you all, and very best of luck over the coming year, and look forward to speaking to some of you individually or on web chat or all the many other platforms that we use. Okay, so I'm going to end the webinar now. Okay, nice to speak to you.